Ask a Teacher Live, where we actually answer your questions about Japanese, which is essentially you setting the topic. Normally I set the topic of the show, but for Ask a Teacher, it is your topics. And we have got, man, these are some really good questions. And it took me a little bit longer than normal to prep because I had to make sure I had my ducks in a row. Just got noticed that I ordered 5 of the Kanji from Zero books, and Amazon just tried to deliver them, but my P.O. box is closed. By the way, as of recording of this video, this book is #1 in Germany and #1 in the USA. Thank you everybody who bought it. It is the latest book, and it's a marvel of modern science that I got it out on Black Friday. I'm very excited. Anyway, so I'm not going to be getting those books today. I ordered 5 myself. Okay. First question is from Hendy24, and he says, how are yo and yo, both read yo, used? I heard they mean something like generation, but is there any difference between them? If not, why are there 2 versions to write the same thing? All right. First of all, I want to point out that kanji, which are based on the Chinese characters, which came over during the Wu dynasty of China. They came to Japan. Japan didn't have a language when they came, right? I mean, they had a language, but they didn't have a writing system. It was called wago. And wago just means like the wa, like you hear in washoku, Japanese food. It was called wago. They had no written language. So they got kanji from the Wu dynasty of China, sorry. And that's why there's Chinese readings and Japanese readings. Because what they did was, they would learn the kanji. Let's take, for example, the kanji for mountain, san, right? And then, but Japanese already had a word for it. It was yama. So they just said, okay, this kanji is san and yama. And all of the Chinese words that had multiple kanji, that became typically multiple kanji words are the Chinese reading, okay? And the words that stand alone are the Japanese reading for that very reason that they applied the same Chinese words that they learned to their own words. But they didn't want to replace their word, so they left it as yama. So that therefore now yama has 2 readings. One is onyomi and one is kunyomi. Onyomi is the Chinese reading and kunyomi is the Japanese reading. Okay. So let's look at these 2 kanji. That's kind of a little bit good background information to know. All right. And by the way, initially it was all kanji. It was all kanji. And back in the day, 1,000 or so years ago, women were forbidden from writing Japanese. Okay. So a woman invented hiragana, which was just the sounds, all of the sounds the Japanese make into one phonetic system. Okay. And that phonetic system was what a lot of the early writings in Japan were written in, and they were written by women because that was what they were able to write, because they were not allowed to learn the highbrow kanji, right? And then eventually hiragana became part of Japan, and I mean, over 1,000 years, now the kanji is mixed with the hiragana. And then, of course, katakana came about for foreign origin words. Right? Kind of a little bit of history. Brought to you by Kanji from Zero. All right, so let's look at this first kanji. So this first kanji is one of its readings. Now, when a reading is in hiragana, that means it's the original Japanese reading. Okay, that's the Japanese word. So it's yo. If it's written in katakana, it's foreign origin, which is Chinese. Okay, even though it's like so long ago, you could argue it's not really Chinese anymore, because even Chinese don't say the kanji this way anymore. And the closest sound to these kanji would be Wu dialect in Japan, in China, not Mandarin or Cantonese. It's much closer to Wu. I know this because we're writing the Chinese the Chinese book right now, Chinese from Zero. And when we researched this, I said, well, if it came from Wu, let's go look it up. I looked it up on the internet. I watched a video that had subtitles. Blew my mind. The Wu dialect had so many close matches to what I thought it was going to sound like based on Japanese. It made a lot more sense to me. Because I think if you learn Mandarin, you're like, why don't they match? Let's get to the main point. So as you can see, we have 4 readings of this kanji. We have yo, sei, se, and so. Okay? And this means era, world, generation. That's the basic meaning of this kanji. So let's look at some common words. Now, we're not going to go through all of the possible words that have each reading. We're just going to go through some big words that use this kanji. So, sekai. Sekai. Sekai means world. Okay? Sekai, world. Sekaiichi means the number 1 in the world. Sekaiichi. Okay? There's another word Now, when kanji are put together like that, they typically are the Chinese reading, and that's exactly what's happening here. Sekai. Remember, yo was the Japanese reading. But when they're separated by hiragana or by themselves, which is essentially separated by hiragana, they tend to be, because it's not always the case, they tend to become the Japanese reading. Sorry. So yononaka. Yononaka means also the world, but like society in general or the world at large. It doesn't mean the world, like sekai is like almost like Earth, the world. This is like, look, society, blah blah blah. Yononaka. Like there was when I used to interpret, the Japanese guys in the my customers had requested to their manager to get another rental car because they were sharing a rental car between 5 people. They're like, hey, can we get another rental car? And the manager said, Yononaka wa omae ga omou hodo amaku nai. Society is not as naive as you think it is. And I made a t-shirt of that because I thought it was funny. It said, Yononaka wa omae ga omou hodo amaku nai. The world is not as naive as you think it is. And that's what he meant. Like, hey, man, you can't just be using money like that. And this guy apparently always did stuff like he said these funny phrases. All right. Can also be this word, seigi. Seigi means century or era. Seigi. Actually, it's seiki. Sorry. I read it properly because that's what it was, but it is seiki. Sorry. You know what's really good? That I know Japanese, but I had a typo. That's the only problem. I had a typo. You know how many typos were in this book before we released it? Over 400. Over 400. Actually, over 500 were fixed. Guess how many are in there now? I think I count 3. All right, so seiki means century or era. Man, I'm taking way too long on this one question. Let's get through it. Century or era. For example, if you want to say 20th century, you say niju seiki. Niju seiki. 20th century. Niju seiki. All right, let's look at the other kanji that we talked about. So they both have a reading of yo. And that's where it's confusing, right? They're both yo. There's tons of kanji that will have the reading of yo. A lot of kanji have the same reading because there's only, remember, think about this. There are 2,100 and some official kanji that there are in Japan, right? But there's only 46 or so sounds, right? Base sounds in hiragana. So what are you going to do, right? You're going to have some sounds that repeat. So this one is, it could be ka. And when you see something in parentheses like that, that's the okurigana. That's called okurigana. That's showing you what it's typically used with. Ka waru. The reading is actually ka. This is also ka. Kaeru. To change. They both mean to change, right? Or to substitute. And yo is one of the readings. And dai and tai are one of the readings. And remember, those that are written in katakana are the Chinese readings. So that means to replace or also world, like the last one, and also generation. So for example, this word right here, kotai. That's like to switch, to change, right? For example, if you're driving on a long trip, you can make a verb out of this to say kotai suru, to change, right? You're going to change, like I'm going to take over the driving. Kotai shimasu ka? Do you want to change? Not change people, but like I'll take your spot, right? Then you've got, did I show you the word, switch turns? Then you've got jidai. Jidai means era, another word for era. But we're going to talk about how they're different in just a second. The other era was, remember, century kind of an era. This is a different era, okay? This is like a period era, right? It's also going to mean period. For example, Edo Jidai, the Edo period of Japan. You'll hear that there's the Showa Jidai. Each emperor, when the emperor passes away, his entire reign becomes the era, okay? So even though the emperor that died when I was in Japan, he had a 64-year reign. He was Hirohito, but his era became Showa, right? So it's Showa Jidai, and now, right now, it is Heisei Jidai, and I don't know exactly what year it is. I forget, but they count their year system different. For example, I was born in Showa 40 something, right? I literally can't remember. Juroku, I think. All right. So this word here, nijudai, means 20s. Nijudai. It means like the 20s, like 20-year-olds, 20s. Not like 20-year-old like not like 20s like the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, like a time. It's literally 20-year-olds. Nijudai. All right. Teens, judai. All right? So you see how they're different? They're not the same thing. But here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Here's a word where they're completely combined. Both of the kanji are in one word. Sedai. Sedai. This, both words, they do this a lot with Japanese, and Chinese, by the way. They'll have one kanji that means the same thing as the other thing, and they combine them together. This is the word generation together, sedai. Here's how it's used. You're going to like this one. X sedai. Generation X. That's what they mean by that, Generation X. All right? That's it. That's the difference. I know it was a long, drawn-out thing, but I think we learned a lot. I feel like that alone could be a video. It was a lot of discussion. Hopefully you learned something. I definitely would put that in maybe Kanji from Zero Book 2 or 3. Sounds exciting to me. All right, next question is from Zekarks. Zekarks, I believe is how he's reading that. I'm currently trying to read a Japanese book, and there is one phrase that I really don't get. A kid says, "Hoka no shima demo yoberu no kai?" I understand that part, but the answer to that was, "Naki kata o kaereba na." What does the kaereba na mean? Hi, this is George of the future, and George of the past, in the heat of the moment of a live stream, read a kanji completely wrong and then committed to the complete wrong reading throughout the answer of a question on Ask a Teacher. So I'm here to kind of fix it. Not kind of fix it. I'm going to actually fix it because I have more information. So this is the kanji that he looked at in this question that we just saw, and he read it as shima. This is not a bad mistake. It's just a heat of the moment mistake, but you could make it too because as you can see, they look similar. Tori has these little 4 hash marks on the bottom, and Shima has a mountain in the spot where those hash marks are. And to make things even more confusing, to blow your mind, this kanji here with mountain and the bird hash marks also is read as Shima. The reason that Shima and bird are related is that birds of the ocean, I read this by the way online, birds of the ocean would rest their wings on islands, and they would also lay their eggs on islands. Therefore they got island got associated with bird, and an island is a mountain in the ocean where a bird would theoretically, land and rest their wings. And let's look at one more kanji that has bird in it that we're going to be using for the rest of this question, which we will be getting back to in just a second. So naku. Naku has bird in it and mouth. So the bird's mouth means to cry or to chirp, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So I do want to just make sure that we understand that this Hoka no Tori de mo yoberu no kai is not can we call another island, which I thought was in the live stream. It is actually are you able to call another bird? Are you able to call another bird? And that led to the answer that we're going to discuss momentarily. Thank you, George of the future. Apologizes for George of the past, who was a little bit too tied up in the live stream to realize the kanji was wrong. See you in the future. Bye. Naki kata o kaereba na. Naki kata o kaereba na. Kaereba, eba is one form of if. There's four easily distinguished forms of if in Japanese, which will be coming up in book 4, the purple book. Okay, Japanese from Zero, book 4. But nakikata is a way to cry, a way to chirp, bark. It's the sound that an animal makes. Now I don't know this anime, but it's very possible that the person doing the talking is an animal, or he's controlling a robot and he's saying that they're chirping. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it's definitely not a person sound, okay? A nakikata. So he's saying nakikata o kaereba if we change the chirp, bark, etc. We don't know what exactly it is. Now, I put the word ya in there because that's kind of what the na does. It really, you could say yeah like You could have an in the beginning, but nakikata o kaereba na. That kaereba na, that's got that feeling of yeah if we change the chirp. All right? Good question. Please post in the comments if it's animals talking. I'm kind of curious now. He asked me if I wanted more background, and I said no, I'll wing it. because I want to see now what he says in the comments. Please go check the comments, guys. All right, next question is from Cody XI. He says, what has been your best experience as a Japanese speaker? I like this question. I like to throw in a non-grammar related question in each one of these Ask a Teachers. So there are like literally tons of amazing experiences, because really you're talking about, I went to Japan when I was 12. I'm 44 now. It maybe took me a couple years to get fairly decent in Japanese, but at the max, let's say I was speaking fluently at 12, that means I have 32 years of experience. Let's shave off 5 years, right? I've got 27 years of speaking Japanese. There's a lot. I'm just going to give you some very easily, quickly memorable ones that I remember, ones that I recalled. Interpreting in anger. I wasn't mad, but I was interpreting for a company called Ichijo Housing. And Ichijo Housing was very proud that they were the 12th largest builder in Japan, house builder. And the president had a very, very well-developed ego. Okay? And we went to we were at a convention, and we were going to talk to all of these vendors. And one of the vendors was an Italian door handle manufacturer. And he didn't speak English. He had an interpreter, and the president of my company didn't speak English, so it was interpreter to interpreter. And the guy at Ichijo Housing was upset that the Italian guy didn't remember who he was. The president of that company didn't recall who he was. And this guy has this huge ego. So he told me, George, you be mad at him when you say this. He told me to be mad. So he said, if you don't remember me, I'm just not going to order another $40,000 worth of your door handles. And I was like,俺のこと覚えてないなら. Oh, actually, that was the Japanese part. I was like, look, if you don't remember me, why don't I just cancel my orders? Huh? Why don't we not order any more from you? And then the other interpreter was like, whatever Italian is. It was really fun. And the guy was like, of course I remember you. Of course. Yes. You. How are you? He didn't remember the guy for sure. That was kind of a fun moment. Certainly a top 3 in my interpreting career. This one, I still enjoy a lot. And some of you already get this. I call it the second jozu. Okay? When you speak Japanese to people, there's always the first jozu. 日本語は上手ですね. That's baloney. They really don't think that. That's like saying, oh, how's the weather? It's very, very just polite speak. They don't believe that your Japanese is good. They're just applauding your effort at that point. It's very, very, bleh, not really real. 日本語は上手ですね. It's the second time. When they go, いや、本当に日本語上手ですね. Then you know you're good. When you start getting the second jozu, good job. Good job. Every time I get it, I'm like, that's right. That's right. I'm pretty good. This reminds me, I'm sorry, I don't mean to go on. My youngest daughter, my oldest daughter, was my only daughter at one point. She was like 1 or 2, and we were potty training her, right? And you know how when your kids do good on the little potty, right? You go, in Japanese, you go, jozu, jozu, good job, right? Good job. So we would always say that to encourage her to not pee in her diaper. We wanted to encourage her to pee in the little toilet, right? So one day I'm taking a leak. I'm peeing, and I left the door open, and she just walks in behind me and goes, jozu, jozu. And the funny part is, I was so happy. I was legit happy. I was like, you know what? I am good at peeing. I'm pretty good at this. I got a lot of practice. I was pretty excited. All right. And, okay, here's another moment that I think is a really, like, a best experience for me, okay? Best experience, it's when they're surprised that you speak English. Because there's a weird thing that will happen when you speak Japanese or any other language. You'll end up making friends that don't speak English. When your Japanese is good enough, if you're like me, I prefer to not have them speak English because I want to speak Japanese, right? Or in my case, I really want to speak Korean. And now that I'm learning Chinese, like I love it when they don't speak any Chinese. I want to like practice my Chinese and I want to push myself, right? So I'll have friends that they only interact with me in Japanese or Korean. It's happened in Korean, and I love it in Korean more because it's my new language, right? Not in Chinese yet because my Chinese is still very, very bad. It will be there. But they'll hear me speak English all of a sudden with a foreigner. They'll see me interact and they'll go, whoa, かっこいい! Oh, so cool! Oh, I didn't even realize you could speak English because you're so used to you speaking Japanese. That's always a cool moment. Always a cool moment. All right. Thank you. All right, let's go to the next question. Ob12 says, very, very elegantly, Ob12 says, I have a problem. Different butts, they're different meanings. That is a very elegant way to ask. What are the different forms of butts and what do they mean? And we're not talking about like round butts and thin butts. We're talking about the word butt, not B-U-T-T-S. Some of you were going in the wrong direction there. So let's look at the three of them. There's more like, there's probably more, but these are the three that I came up with. And I say probably just so that I don't get the people that go, actually, there's 14 different butts. But in colloquial speaking, actually, if you start anything with actually, you're probably a douche. Just saying. All right. First one is demo. All right. Then we've got kedo. And we've got just ga. Now, these three are, I'm going to say, the most prevalent ways of saying but in Japanese, okay? All right. So let's go ahead and there are more. There's like desu kedo, blah, 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 but we're not talking about that. All right. So let's look at 3 sentences all using different forms of but and talk about them. 行きたいです。でも、時間がないです。I want to go. Period. でも、時間がないです。But I have no time. Now in English, we have a rule that you're not allowed to start a sentence with but this demo is in Japanese starting a sentence with a but, right? It's a conjunction, right? You're not supposed to start a sentence with a conjunction in English. A conjunction is like and or but or I think. So you're not supposed to do that, right? But in Japanese, demo is always a fresh new sentence that connects to the other sentence, but not making it one sentence. It's still 2 sentences, right? Now, the next one is a similar in sound, but they change a little bit. Say, 行きたいんですが、時間がありません. Sorry, I didn't have the kanji there. I should have had the kanji to keep it consistent. 行きたいんですが. Now, the reason why I have the un in there, whole different reason, but you have to. It doesn't sound right to say 行きたいですが. It's 行きたいんですが. It's a blend of 行きたいのですが. And this is a very polite way. Very polite way. We have one sentence now. Okay? One. Not 2 sentences. It's 行きたいんですが. I'd like to go. Right? However, 行きたいんですが, 時間がありません. I have no time. This is almost always going to be a polite sentence. Now we're going to do 行きたいけど, 時間がないよ. Informal. Now, けど is typically used with informal. Okay? 行きたいけど, I want to go, but 時間がないよ. Could you say 行きたいですけど, 行きたいんです, 行きたい, it would actually become 行きたいんだけど, definitely not super polite. It's very casual. 行きたいんだけど、時間がないです. Okay? 時間がないよ. Alright? So that's the 3 buts. Hopefully that helps you out. Thank you for watching. Ask a Teacher. This is Japanese from Zero. I will see you all on this doubleheader. We're doing one more right after this. See you all in the next Ask a Teacher.